This is London Bridge Station at the west end of Tooley Street. The name Tooley Street is a corruption of St Olave Street. It was named after Prince Olive of Norway and later became St Olaf. St Olaf House, a lovely Art Deco building that used to house the Haynes Company. Olaf came to England in the 11th century. He was an ally of Ethelred and helped him fight back the Danes from London Bridge. When Olaf returned home, he was crowned King of Norway, but then he tried to convert his people to Christianity. They didn't like that, and he actually got murdered. Later on he was canonised, and that's why he's now Saint Olaf. There's a big Norwegian community in Rotherhithe. They've actually got their own church, the Norskirk, the Norwegian church. Look at the steeple at the top and you see a lovely gold Viking ship. Where St Olaf House now stands used to be St Olave's Church. It was built in the 11th century and it existed right up until the 1920s in various guises. When it was demolished, the tower was retained and used as a drinking fountain in a newly laid out town park. Denmark House. It was once the offices of the Bennett Steamship Company. If you crane your neck and look right up in the air, you'll see a lovely carving of a steamship, some lovely cherubs. It's very hard to see from the ground. You're better off seeing it from the London Bridge walkway. It was built in 1908. It's still a very fine looking building, but it's now part of the London Bridge Hospital. Tooley Street is a mix of old and new. Some of the Victorian buildings have been kept, and some are just facades. It's now morphing into a very modern development, most of it being glass. Hayes Wharf got a facelift in the 1980s. It was once known as London's larder, and everything from eggs, bacon, tea and butter to pineapples, ham and cheese was loaded and unloaded here. The Hayes family founded it in the 17th century. In 1838, a John Humphrey took over the business and imported tea from China. These were the times when super-fast tea clippers, whose speed ensured fresh deliveries of tea. The boats were so fast that regular races were held and the first tea-laden clipper back into port was in a prize. A more sinister commodity, and one that required fast delivery, was opium and cocaine. Fellow tea trader John Horniman owned boards here. He lived in Forest Hill and upon his death donated his house to the public. He'd been a keen collector of overseas cultural knickknacks. The house and the collection now form the Horniman Museum. This fantastic ship was designed by David Kemp. It's a great piece of art and a fun fountain that will squirt you when you least expect it. People always drop coins into fountains for luck and to make a wish, but probably they don't know why they're doing it. It's actually an ancient pagan tradition that was adopted by the Romans. Votive offerings would be dropped into the water for the gods to favour the depositor and bring him luck. The coins collected from this particular fountain are donated to Guy's Hospital. A favourite last request of Bermondsey people is to have their ashes thrown into the river, where they have lived and worked all their lives. Bunches of flowers are a regular sight upon the tide, carrying someone away on a last journey to the sea. The Christmas shop is open all year round. Walk from the door and you step into Victorian Yuletide merrymaking. Hundreds of decorations, lights and candles welcome you. It could be June outside, but in the Christmas shop it's always December. Medieval Bermondsey was a pretty important place for the clergy. The Abbot of Battle had a house here. You could only get to his house by going over a bridge, which is why it's called Battle Bridge. Long before the court was built, the Borough Compter stood here. It was a notorious debtors' prison that was cramped, smelly and full of vermin. The turnkey described the stench when opening the door as enough to turn the stomach of a horse, and it stood here until 1853. English grounds. It's all to do with the railway across the road. When the London and Greenwich Railway was being built, gangs of Irish and English workers were used to build it, but they had violent, drunken clashes after work, so the two sides were separated into English grounds and Irish grounds. On Trafalgar Day 1971, HMS Belfast passed under Tower Bridge to be greeted into a new and permanent home. Belfast had fired her guns at Normandy. She'd also been involved in the sinking of the huge enemy battleship Scharnhorst. In 1945, she arrived in the Far East to meet with the surrender of Imperial Japan. Her sailors were some of the first to witness the atrocities meted out by the Japanese on British prisoners of war. There are regular parties on board for the veterans, and there is even a Scharnhorst Survivors Club. This is a great place to get a feel for the Second World War. Air raid sirens, Churchill speeches, war songs, evacuees and gas masks, it's all here. It may be just a distant memory now, but during those times, Tooley Street was a highly dangerous place to be. Stainer Street was used by hundreds of people to shelter in the war. It had a medical aid post at one end, and when the sirens sounded, the huge steel doors would be closed to the bombs. But in 1941, a bomb penetrated the arch, blasting those sheltering and causing the steel doors to be blown deep inside and crushing many people. A gas main burst, as did a water main. Those not crushed were drowned. A few hours later, as ARPs desperately tried to rescue those trapped, a time delay bomb exploded, killing even more. A lot of the elderly local people remember this event only too well, so it's fitting that there is a plaque to mark this terrible tragedy. Two plaques and a street named after him. Firefighter James Braidwood was a local hero. In 1861, Cotton's Wharf caught fire. And with all the lard, the eggs, the bacon, the greasy stuff and the saltpetre, it was quite a fire. What started as a crisis turned into a tragedy. Braidwood was killed beneath a burning wall and died instantly. His was one of the biggest funerals London had seen. The Unicorn is a purpose-built children's theatre. Just across the road, behind the Shipwright Arms, is another theatre, the Southwark Playhouse. This is more London. It's a new development that's really opened up the riverfront. There was once a street here called Pickle Heron Street. It must have been rather smelly because the sewers from Tooley Street used to run out at this point into the river. This is the view from City Hall. Potter's Fields is quite a modern name for this area. It's only about 300 years old. Its proper name is Horsley Down. It was once where the horses grazed between the streams and the pastures. The park here was once the overspill burial yard of St Olive's Church. It was leased to them by the governors of St Olive's Grammar School in 1733. The potters in question worked around here making Delft-style pottery. Once tea arrived in England, people wanted posh china to go with it. The blue and white crockery being produced in Holland was all the rage, and many of the Dutch emigrated and settled in Bermondsey. In Tudor times, this piece of land saw many an ease up. There was a regular fair here, with stalls selling trinket, a roast spit, plenty of beer and dancing round the maypole. The maypole stood round about the grammar school car park area and was there for centuries. In fact, there's a picture in Hatfield House that shows a very merry scene going down Pottersfield's Way. It's rumoured that Elizabeth I actually attended one of the parties here. That is why we've got Queen Elizabeth Street just across the road on the other side of the bridge. Fair Street is a remnant of the Tudor Fair. A 16th century map shows that the street ran through the fields of Horsley Down and onto Dock Head. It still follows this route today.